In this video, I want to talk about the academic journal article. I did print it out, and I hope you did too, but I understand if you don't have a printer. But the academic article, Marge Simpson, Blue-Haired Housewife, Defining Domesticity in The Simpsons. So from here on, I am going to have you read a collection of journal articles so that you can see how the techniques or the template that I'm trying to bring to this class would work on a professional level. I don't expect you to write this type of material, although I don't know, I'm running into some really intelligent students and you might be able to do this down the line or sooner than later, but please know that I'm not expecting you to provide this sort of thing for my class. But I do want you to work with the template. And one of the things that I think is illustrated here, first, the readability of this is pretty good for academic work. I mean, you can if you sit down and really focus, you can get through this thing and understand quite a lot of it. So you don't have to struggle through, academies or weird phrasings, that are there maybe to make it sound smarter than it really is. I think the writing style is something that is commendable here. Notice that the title. Notice you have a two-tier title, and always the first part is going to be your main title, and what's after the separating mark. In this case, it's a colon, the two dots. What's after that is your subtitle, and you really want to try to pack your title with as much information as possible, because when this gets into when research work like this gets archived entered into the archival services, and then someone enters a keyword like gender studies or domesticity or postmodernism or something like that, and they get 3,000 hits, 3,000 results. They're not going to read the abstracts on every single one. They're not even going to open up every hit. They're just going to look at the titles. You can see the titles in the initial results, and sometimes it's just a process of scrolling through the titles to see if there's anything, given the information that the title gives you, if you can see if there's anything that in there that possibly might relate, if it's worth the risk of opening that thing up, because you don't have a lot of time to spend. So the title is very important. Now notice here, look at everything you get. You get the main, you get the character that the paper is going to focus on, right? Marge Simpson, and then you get this blue-haired notion, right? So the blue hair better be in here somewhere because it's in the title. The titles are making promises. The title makes a promise, and blue-haired housewife, Newhouse is going to talk about that blue hair, right? She's going to complicate it. She's going to say it's more than just a cartoon thing. It does something. Here's its function. Here's how complex it is. And then you get housewife. So you get the angle that Newhouse is going to use here. That she's going to look at Marge in terms of a fictionalized housewife. And then you get the goal of the paper, or the job, if you will, of the paper. It's to define something. This is a definition paper, and it's what are you defining? Domesticity. Where are the Simpsons? There's a lot of information there, and I really want you to practice that when you come to writing your titles. Okay. Now, whenever you read work that I give you, especially work of some length, even 2 or 3 pages long, that's long enough for us to look at strategies in terms of openings and closings. So I want you to ask yourself, how does Newhouse open this article? And when I give you another one and another one, I want you to remember to ask, how does this author open this? What is the first sentence? What are the first couple of sentences actually doing? Because if you start seeing a pattern, or you start seeing the techniques for just those first couple of lines that an author will put down on their article to get going, you will start developing your own techniques and strategies in imitation of that, right, to use in your research paper. And you can ask that very same question toward the end, is how does this author close? How do they wrap up when everything basically is said and done? How do they write those last 2 paragraphs or whatever, And ask that about Newhouse. Ask it about Ott. Ask it with the other article that we're going to read, and the one after that, or the one after that. How does it open? How does it close? And that's one way that you can start developing confidence and choices, that you have choices because you've seen it done before, right? And you can imitate that. So, sometimes I'll have students ask me, well, how do I just open my paper? Or how do I close it? And I'll be happy to share ideas and thoughts, but if you spend a lot of time watching text like movies or documentaries or listening to uh, organized narrative like a podcast or even TV shows will help you with this. But also if you just read books, especially nonfiction books, not textbooks because they don't necessarily have to deal with this issue, but you're going to pick up strategies for opening and closing, right? You just have to be able to recognize what you're seeing and start paying attention, and then you'll be able to start seeing the patterns and you'll be able to imitate that. So you actually can pull on some of your own experiences here because you've dealt with text so many times in your life because there's so many types of text, right? Okay, now some of the things that I want to point out is that pretty soon I'm going to be introducing an academic template that is sort of the pattern or the general figure that academic work takes. Okay, for example, you're going to have a well-crafted title, and then somewhere in the first third of that work, that piece, you're going to get your topic. The topic's going to be delivered to you. It could be a guiding question, or it could be just a straight up, sometimes it's kind of obvious, right? But the topic's given. But what happens then is a focusing in on exactly what is the question at hand, or what you're looking for, or what you're examining specifically. So there is a general topic sometimes, but the topic that is really delivered to you is always going to be a specific topic. All right. Not just television history. Not just sitcoms. It's looking at an American family, the portrayal of an American family in the history of the modern history of family sitcoms, but more specifically than that, how it shows up in The Simpsons. You see what I'm saying? I mean, this is a focused topic. Okay, so once that topic is given, the author might then is going to talk about the conversation that exists around that specific topic, or perhaps around more general topics related to that. Okay, so you're going to get a review of literature, and sometimes it's very well woven into the text, so it maybe doesn't feel like you're reading a review of literature. Sometimes it's a little more easy to recognize than at other times. But basically, you'll get the author saying, "Look, here's my topic. Here's my focus topic, and here are what other writers are writing about this." Now, at this point, the author is providing you a review of literature not to support any of their ideas yet, but just to give you an overview of some of the main voices of that conversation, because the author is also getting ready to tell you quickly what their contribution is. And you're not going to be able to recognize that as a reader of the article unless you know what the conversation is, right? So, Newhouse is basically saying, I sat down on a conversation table, and the conversation was about families and domesticity. What it's like to be a family on American sitcoms. And they were talking about all sorts of things. They were bringing up this about that sitcom and this sitcom, and this one was looking at it through Marxism view and postmodernism and through Western Christianity, and they were looking at it through economic theory, and they were trying to do all sorts of things, right? And then I decided, I think I will work with domesticity, but nobody is doing it with The Simpsons. I think I'm going to do it with The Simpsons, and I'm going to tell you why this is a specific thing, right? So first Newhouse is telling you, here's what other people are talking about in a general way about this topic. And then she's going to say, now here's what I have to say. And you can really see that in the very first paragraph. If you look at the first paragraph here, you see where she'll say something or two in a general way. She say researchers are looking at this, and then she'll give you a parentheses with like 6 or 7 sources listed, authors listed, last names listed. That's her way of doing a review of lit. She's saying, here's Alberti, here's Bybee and Overbeck, here's Glenn, here's Henry, The Triumphs of Popular Culture, here's Heron, here's Hull, here's Irwin et al. Now I'm actually looking at that bottom of that first paragraph, and now that I'm actually looking at this, I want to say something a little more specific here. So if you want to take a look at this as you listen, as you list authors like this in a comma, you separate them with semicolons. Excuse me, in parentheses. If you're listing multiple sources to back up a certain point or a certain general observation, you need to separate those sources with semicolons, okay? Because sometimes you'll get a source that has two authors, right? Or three or more, and you have to use commas for that one source, and then you go on to another source. So I'm not sure how often you've done something like this. Usually maybe when you do parenthetical citation like this, it's only with one author and a page number, right? She's not giving page numbers here because she's referring to the whole article or the whole book or the whole study that these people did and these people did and these people did. There are 3, 5, 7, 8 articles or books or studies here. That's why I'm saying this is her review of lit. She's doing this pretty quickly, but she's saying here's this author that was looking, this author and these authors and this group and this author were all looking at, you know, the Simpsons this way or the family this way, right? Now, so let's go through these authors really quickly. Alberti, semicolon, Bybee, and Overbeck, because you have two authors. Now, when you have two or more authors, take them as they are listed on the journal article. All right, do not, or the book title. I mean the book, title page. Do not alphabetize them. The first one that's listed is the primary author. The second are helpers. They get. It's all placement, okay? So the order that they show up on publication is important. Don't switch them around. Now, in this case, the Bybee and Overbeck are alphabetized, but that's just coincidence, okay? If it were Overbeck and Bybee, right away I would know Overbeck was the one that the primary author. All right. Okay, then you have Glenn. Then you have Henry. Open quotation marks. The triumph of popular culture. Close quotation marks. The reason you have that is that Newhouse is using 2 or 3 sources. She's using more than one source from Henry. So if you just take that last name and you go back to the back, you might want to do this right now if you're following along. You go back there and you look for Henry, because that's a last name. You'll see that it's Henry Matthew, and there are 2 articles that she uses in this article, in her own article. 2 articles, or yeah, two articles that she's using, both written by Matthew Henry. They were different articles, but he wrote these. And so in order to distinguish that, right, because if you just look at Henry, if all she had put here were Henry and not the name of the article, you'd go back there, you'd find 2 listed. And then, well, which one, So let's keep on going. You have Heron, semicolon, Hull, semicolon, Irwin et al. That's et alia, which is Latin for and others. So this is more than 3 authors that are listed. If, go back and find Irwin and you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's see, it's Irwin. Okay, so there are 3. So they're using the alia here for 2 or more, for more than 2. Excuse me. Irwin, William, Mark, Conrad, and Aon Scoble, or whatever, editors of The Simpsons and Philosophy. Okay, all right. So if you're tracking with me, okay, the first paragraph is just is a review of lit. From the middle on, it's a review of lit. And if you think with me like a target, Newhouse is right at the bullseye of the target, but then there are rings around it, right? And she's kind of one of those center rings, right? These are just general notions, right? But then she moves in the second paragraph. She moves closer in and says, now here are the people that are specifically studying, the Simpsons, right? And so in the second paragraph, I want you to read that and look at how there is a review of lit going on there. She's citing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She's citing 8 sources in that second paragraph, but they're more of a specific conversation. It's like the first paragraph gave you overviews of some of the main voices in a kind of a big table, right? But then she said in that table there was like a sub conversation happening. It was a specific one among these 6 right here, or 7, whatever, 8. And the second paragraph is a review of lit of those. Really quickly, really well done, but she's giving you that. And then if you look at her third paragraph on page 672, she tells you what she's going to do, okay? So she is going to give you her contribution statement and a little bit of a schematic. She's going to say, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm focusing on. and here's how I'm going to do it. In part one, I'm going to do this. In part two, I'm going to, or in this section, I'm going to look at that, and then I'm going to do this, and after this, I'm going to do that. All right, so you need to see that happening in that third paragraph, okay? So I would call that a contribution statement and a schematic. A schematic is sort of a map of something, right? And, you know, many times in academic journal articles, authors will provide a contribution statement and a schematic in an explicit way. In other words, they'll just come up, they'll come straight out and tell you that. Other times it'll be more implicit, and in other words, it's there, but they kind of wove it in between the lines of their article. But for the vast majority of academic work like this, you're going to get at the beginning of your page, the first third of it or whatever is going to, or maybe the first fifth, whatever, the first couple of pages is going to be, here's my topic, here's my specific focus, here's a review of lit, of people that are writing either about that general topic or the specific focus. I'm giving you this so you know that I did my research, you know that I did my reading, and also so that you can recognize how I'm making a contribution when I tell you my contribution statement, which is going to happen after my review of lit. So topic clarification, review of lit, contribution statement. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my thesis. Here's my, quickly what I found, and then here's how I'm going to explain this more fully. That's the schematic, okay? Because, if an author comes and tells you, hey, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of my paper, right? Here's what I studied. Here's my goal. Here's my main question, and here was the answer I found, and then I'm going to explain this in part one and in the second part and the third part. You might be like, well, why do I need to read more? Well, the author reserves the right to expand on the explanation and to say, here's why I ended up, with this observation that I made, this contribution, and here was my thought history, the steps I took to get here, and I want to explain that. Because somebody might be interested, another reader, another researcher might be interested to see that explanation in full, because it might help them think about the very same thing or learn a technique or a method, and then they might want to apply it to another sitcom, right? That would be extension, wouldn't it? Because Newhouse is saying something about Marge Simpson as the mother and the wife at the center of the home of the Simpsons, right? And someone else might be realizing, well, there's another very famous cartoon sitcom, and the wife there is, let me use Newhouse's technique to look at that, right? So that would be extension, and that person could write, could get a path, to an idea, a mental outline or a structure to work with that would allow them to create a short piece, like a book chapter or a journal article, that would allow them to contribute to the conversation and would help them begin there or keep on maintaining their growth as a scholar. So that's why you have these things here, right? The synopsis is there so that if you realize once 2 or 3 pages in that you got what you needed from this, because it's not exactly where you're going with your own research, and if you can get a quick overview of the following 15 pages, it might tell you that you don't really need to read the 15 pages because this is not going to be core to your own work, right? But you kind of need to know what she does because you're trying to stay up on things. So that's why sometimes authors will give a synopsis, or editors will put an abstract up underneath the article. Now, there's no abstract here under the article's title, but sometimes you'll get a journal article and you'll see the title, and then under the title you get a little paragraph. Sometimes it's a parenthesis, sometimes it's just smaller font size, but that smaller paragraph is going to give you a quick overview of the whole thing, right? So that you can determine whether or not you need to read the whole thing or just read a third of it, or skip around a little bit, read this section, read that other section, stuff like that. Or if you need to, that's it. You don't need to read it at all because you got the summary of it, and that was enough for whatever you were doing at that moment. Maybe you're doing triage because you have 30 journal articles to get through. You're trying to filter the ones that you need to spend more time with. So for the 30, all you really want are the synopses or the abstracts for that moment, and then you help develop that one big pile into 3 smaller piles. This one I need to read, this I don't, So these things are very useful to other researches, and I want you to start recognizing that as you see it. So again, the basic template, and I probably will do a separate video where I kind of draw it up on a board, or but I can just tell it here. It's a two-tier title. All right, it's an intro, an opening strategy, which could be a quote, it could be a story, it could be or it could be that could be omitted, right? And the writer might then automatically go into telling you what the topic is, the general topic, the focus topic, maybe defining some terms, getting you to really understand what they were trying to look at, right? And sometimes that might be phrased in a very specific question, like what they were trying to answer. And then they will give you a review of literature as to what other people have done about that topic, about from their own approaches, different approaches from the one that might be in the article, but a review of literature about other people dealing with that topic in a general way or a specific way, or other people trying to answer that question, right? So it's two-tier title, it's topic announcement, topic narrowing, review of literature. Then after that, it's a contribution statement, and then a schematic, just a paragraph where that says literally, in the rest of this paper, I'm going to expand on this thesis. First, I'm going to show you this. Then I'm going to develop this idea. Third, I will question. Fourth, I'll define this concept. Fifth, I'll apply it. And sixth, I'll present some questions for further research or something. Now, I'm using this language so that you can kind of see it as a list or a first, then, next, after that, then, it sort of as a very general like overview, right? Many times authors will use language that weaves it in more integrally into the text. So you might not actually get like section 1, I'm going to do this. Section 2, I'm going to do that. Section 3, I'm going to do this. You might, but very often it's more, the writing is a little more sophisticated than that. But you need to be able to recognize when in that paragraph or two, the author is actually trying to give you a map, of how they're going to flesh out their contribution in the next 10, 15, or 20 pages. Now, those next pages is really the support section or the explanation section where everything gets fleshed out, where that little schematic that's at the top gets expanded and fleshed out, right? And then you have your closing. Okay, so it's two-tier title. It's intro to topic, focusing on the topic, review of literature, contribution statement, schematic, then explanation of the schematic, and then at the end, closing. All right, and if you just keep that in mind, you'll see it here, and you'll see it in the next article, and the other articles. Okay, and then you might be able to use this basic structure to write your research paper. All right, but the only way you're going to get genuine profit out of this is if you buckle down and you watch these videos that are routinely 20 to 30 minutes long, you try to listen, and then you actually do the reading. And some of you might actually struggle with this. I don't know, but I'm just rolling the dice here. The odds are that some of you really have not ever really read something like this before, and that's fine. That's fine. That's exactly what these classes are designed to do, is to introduce you to this sort of writing, this sort of thinking. But in order to get something out of it, you got to put something into it, which is like actually sitting down and reading it, and reading it, just getting through it. So let me challenge you to do that, okay? This is kind of not like a smooth spectrum sort of thing. In other words, if you just listen to my videos and never doing the reading, it's not like, I don't think you're going to get like 80%, like if you do everything, you get 100%, right? I'm not talking about grades. I'm just talking about comprehension and growth. If you skip the reading, it's like I think you're going to be lucky to even get 10% growth out of this, And at that point, you may as well skip everything. You know what I'm saying? But okay, I hope you get to it. I hope you get something out of this.